Do you need encouragement to turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Perdue.
Get knocked down and I'm up again. You're never going to hold me down. Whoa, I get knocked down. Oh, podcast starting. Oh, sorry about that. Not even my dogs like to hear me sing. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Hey, thank you all for coming in, sharing my podcast, keeping me going for over 6 years. Let's see if we got another 6 in us, and we'll see what happens. Get powerful stories like today. Man, this is about an adoption. Not that an adoption happens, every time, every day, million times probably, I don't know. But this is back in the 70s when it was a black market adoption going on. She was trafficked to a bipolar alcoholic mother, 600-pound father. She's an abuse survivor, author with book to come in November, speaker, and she wants to work on reforming the adoption as an advocate. Welcome to the show, Patricia Knight Meyer.
Hi, Dr. Perdue. Thank you so much for having me on. I am so excited to be here with you.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And I mean, you got a story again to be, what just gets me is that if you can't do the adoption the right way, which means you're probably not qualified, and to go through a black market, something's just definitely ain't right about that. And we know it's outlawed. It's not supposed to happen, but we know it does. So it's sad that they do stuff like that. So, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're sharing your journey, and I'm glad that you're sorry you're going what you went through it overall. But take the initiative to help other people here in the long run and years to come.
Well, thank you so much. Part of why I wanted to be on your show is the perseverance aspect of trying to uncover the secrets of what I consider to be my stolen identity. The repercussions of being trafficked on the black market meant that I eventually grew up to learn that I had never legally been adopted and that my parents had never received a legal birth certificate for me. So basically, the name that I was given never appeared in the system anywhere. So without finding my biological family, I couldn't prove, even though I eventually found the record of my birth as baby girl to a given woman in the Texas birth records, I couldn't prove that I was the child that belonged on that birth record without finding those parents and getting them to testify in court and proving that my DNA matched the two of them. So it took a lot of perseverance to get there. And of course, as you mentioned, the people who quote unquote adopted me, it took a lot of perseverance to grow up in the household that I did. They didn't willingly walk into a black market. I'm not sure of that. I guess I don't want to believe they did. At the time in the 60s, a lot of people were going to attorneys to privately adopt babies. And the black market basically came in when those attorneys chose to not follow through on certain processes and legal proceedings that needed to be done in order to arrange the adoption in a legal fashion. The attorney that my parents went with turned around after about 1.5 years and kept telling them they needed to pay him more money for this, more money for that before they would get the papers. And ultimately they paid about $30,000, and they got to the point where they had nothing left to pay, and they realized they either needed to go to the police or they needed to just walk away and shut it down. And they were fearful if they went to the police that that I would be taken away.
Yeah.
So when I got adopted, I don't know for sure that my parents, my mother having her alcoholism and my father with his struggles with obesity, I wonder if just that going through that might have exacerbated addictions that already existed. Because when I was adopted, my adoptive father was 300 pounds. He didn't reach 650 until I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
But and my mother drank, but I wouldn't have necessarily considered her an alcoholic. But I do think the threat and fear that at any moment someone could come back for their baby probably exacerbated the stress of living under that, probably exacerbated these addictions that they were predisposed to have, and sort of set that course. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see
other
that.
questions.
No, I can see that being an issue. Wondering again, knowing is not truly legal at this point, that someone can come grab you at any time, and then they're going to lose, what they were fighting for. So I could see where it would enhance the addictions. Yeah, I could see that.
And I grew up always feeling like there was some kind of secret that was being kept from me, even though they told me I was adopted before I could even really understand the story. I never remember a time not knowing that, that my parents were not my biological parents, as best as a child's mind can like wrap around that. But at the same time, I also had this nightmare of this dark man coming to take me away.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, just super intuition or what. But I kind of always felt like there was something wrong with my story, and I was just waiting to find out what it was. And
did they ever lead to you in your head that be careful who you talk to, that someone may be trying to get information to take you away?
That's right. Yeah. All mothers, they tell their children, don't talk to strangers. If anybody ever pulls up and says, come with me, you scream, you throw everything you have and you run.
Yeah.
And my mother told me those stories, but when she told them, she was very adamant about it. Like she was so serious. I remember absorbing that as a child and thinking like that the whole world was, there was somebody waiting to pull you into a car at any moment. And I think that as an adoptee, we kind of grow up being hypervigilant and wanting to fit in and trying to kind of prove that we belong to our adoptive families. So I was very tuned into what the feelings and emotions of my parents were at all times. Yeah.
And so I'm kind of surprised that they would have been openly at the beginning with you, like I said, as far back as you can remember, that you're adopted. I wouldn't have thought they would have done that, just to keep that information away, just because the way things were done.
Yeah, I think that decision was because my father was Hispanic, and he wasn't like even slightly light-skinned Hispanic. He was a dark-skinned Hispanic man.
Okay.
Some people even mistook him for being African American. Mm-hmm. And my mother was a blonde woman, and I was a little dark-haired, light-skinned freckle girl. So I think they knew that I would figure that out. But also I had 6 cousins who were there the day I was brought home from the hospital. So they probably figured this is not a secret that was going to easily stay a secret.
Yeah, by the time the kids get together, as they get older and talk. And
And I know a lot of adoptees. I speak at a lot of adoption conferences, and I've met so many adoptees whose parents did think that. And unfortunately, they found out through cousins, through teachers at school, at family reunions, in all kinds of bad ways.
Yeah. So, all right. So this is interesting. You again, you're the main show of this. You keep going with your story. But how long did it take you before you started hunting for mom and dad, like you said, to get that real birth certificate or whatnot, so you can get your name back, or you're finally somebody,
Right. Well, I was 12 and I got a part in a school play, and I needed a social security card. And that's when my parents sat me down and told me what was the secret, and that was that they didn't have my birth certificate, didn't know my true birthday, had guessed, and didn't have my birth certificate. Well, I think I just said that, but that they couldn't get my social security card without one. And that is when my adoptive father said that he was going to go to the state of Texas and fix it. And he did come back later with a document that said delayed certificate of birth. And so he obtained that delayed certificate by swearing testimony to the fact that I was born to them, and that they had just never filed for a birth certificate, and maybe I was like born at home or something. I don't know exactly what he said, but I know that they did not mention that an adoption happened. And that's how I actually finally obtained some form of a birth certificate, though it was fraudulently acquired. And so I knew throughout my life that that was kind of a questionable document. And then I got pregnant at 18. I ended up being a single teenage mother myself, and was standing in my birth mother's shoes, had to decide what I wanted to do. Some of my family wanted me to put the child up for adoption. I didn't think that had panned out so well for me. So I was against that. And so I kept my child, and it was giving birth and becoming a mother that really got me thinking about my birth mother and what it must have been like to relinquish me. And then also worrying that since there were this weird story about the whole adoption, that maybe I had been a stolen child, that the attorney had, who knows where
from there. And my other question would have been finish your story with this one, but I got another question would be, as you're thinking about it, as you got older, do you think they wanted a baby to be mom and dad parent, or do you think they realize as you get older, you can help them around the house because of their addiction, the overeating, the alcoholic, and you were stepping in to be the grown up?
Well, I think I did step in to be it's a very insightful question. I did step in to be the grown up most of my life. My mother never worked, and at one point just stopped driving a car totally. And my father, because he was he grew so large and was so disabled, he couldn't really walk very far. So by the age of 12, I was going into the grocery store and doing all the shopping. I was paying the bills, people running in to pay the bills, anything that required legs. I was pretty much doing it because my mother was sort of kind of like she lived in her own little world and didn't want to participate in any way when it came to work or the hard stuff. But I do think that when my mother found out that I was pregnant, it was her opportunity to live through me the pregnancy that she never was able to have. So she was very excited about watching me be a mother, watching me become a mother, and of course having another baby that she could spoil and she was bipolar, and I know that she was self-medicating, and I think it's a struggle for some people in the book that have read the book, and others praise me for it, the fact that I didn't villainize my mother. She had wonderful qualities about her too. It just depended on which day you happened to be meeting, which version of her showed up.
I get you.
So most people that knew her really adored her and thought she was a fantastic woman, unless they encountered her on like one of her bad days. But all in all, she was very supportive of the pregnancy. And I try to note also that a lot of birth mothers who have to make that decision of whether they're going to put their child up for adoption or try to raise it on their own, I wouldn't have been able to make that decision to keep my child if I hadn't had the support that I had from my family. It still blows my mind that in today's day and age, so many families that have plenty of money and resources force their daughters to relinquish and pressure them to relinquish just because it's inconvenient for the family or it brings shame on the family.
Social.
There's a lot about being, what kind of mother is worthy.
And I understand what you're saying there, but I'd rather them go ahead and give it to someone else that could provide a good lifestyle than someone shamingly bringing them up or regretting to bring them up. And but I understand what you're saying there. You did what you need to do to get pregnant. You should take the responsibility. But to me, if they're going, no, 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 I'd much prefer moving on. But I'm like you, though. Really, they should hang on. Yeah.
Well, there's sort of been a myth that started in the 50s that babies come as blank slates and that, it won't know the difference when it grows up about who's raising it. And science now has proven that's really not true.
Yeah, I can believe that.
And birth mothers who relinquish have a 20% more likely to commit suicide after the fact.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
And adoptees who grew up as adoptees have a 10% more likely to be suicidal and 5 times more likely to have alcohol or drug addiction abuse and substance abuse. And so statistically, we're creating scenarios where the two parties that are supposed to be being helped in this scenario are actually wind up putting a different kind of burden on the families and on themselves. So there's a lot of things that I'm out here trying to educate the world about, and so and also in this day and age of DNA testing, secrets don't stay gone forever. So
yes, true.
When people ask me, well, do you just want to get rid of adoption completely? I say no. Because I think there are many situations where, like, if the mother is, severely addicted to drugs, the baby needs a quality home, right? But I say that I am most in favor of kinship adoption. That's giving the families of the birth mother or the birth father and the birth father himself the first right of refusal before a baby is put up for traditional adoption. And birth fathers' rights are also, they're practically zero.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, if the woman decides not, I don't understand why it's not offered to the man, because it took 2 to tangle. And then if he says no, then I say, but I don't understand why. I'm sure it happens in a rarity, but it's not common.
It happens more than you think, in the fact that even though you're supposed to check a box that say the birth father has been notified that there is a baby in this world, a lot of the times that box does not get checked. And a lot of times the birth father never knows and his parents never know. And there are numerous court cases where birth fathers have found out after the fact and tried to regain custody of that child. That is half of him. Yeah. When I found my birth father, he never knew that I'd ever existed. He said that he was a single man already raising a 4-year-old son when I was conceived. He said he absolutely would have raised me as his child. And adoptees, when we grow up in adoptive homes, we're constantly looking for people who look like us, who talk like us, who think like us. We don't have what we call genetic mirroring. We don't know what we look like. We've never seen another human soul that has anything that looks anything like us. And then when I met my birth father, not only did I look like him, but I thought like him. I had high levels of anxiety like he did. Our interests and our skills, like our affinity for different things, were very similar. And unfortunately, when you're brought into an adoptive home, sometimes, your whole family are bookworms and you're the sporty one. And so you don't get those parents that are all into sports that would be nurturing that in their child if it came naturally to them.
Now, how old did you get out of your biological mom as well?
I did. And so...
now, how old were they when you were doing this search? And how old were you?
Right.
So when you were doing this?
Yeah. So when I was 20 and I figured out that this paperwork, after I gave birth to my daughter and I was looking at her birth certificate, I realized that hers and mine were worlds apart.
Yeah.
So I thought then that that's when I was going to go looking, but I was also a single mom headed to college, and I knew that if I ever lost that piece of paper, the fraudulent birth certificate that I had, that I likely wouldn't be able to get it replaced. So I had this thing in the back of my head, like, you're going to have to take care of this at some point. But ultimately, my father, due to his obesity, died when I was 25. That was like my first semester at the University of Texas. And, life gets in the way. And then it wouldn't be for 15 more years until my adoptive mother died, and I would have been 38 years old, that I really began to realize, like, if she's dying, then, and I knew she was an older adoptive mom, then my birth mother and my birth father could be dying too.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, if I lose this piece of paper, and I know at that point I'd already gone to the state and tried to find a replacement, or tried to get the original, and they couldn't find it, I knew something needed to be done. But I think it was in my grief after losing my adoptive mom, and not having any siblings, I was an only child, that I felt very lonely and isolated in the world. And I just felt like there's this huge other gigantic question mark that's been following me around my whole life. I have to solve this problem. I have to solve this puzzle now. And within less than a few months after my adoptive mother passed, I found my birth mother. And the reason I was able to do that, the irony is that there was never a legal adoption that sealed off my records. Mm-hmm. So that's how I was able to find, basically what I looked for was any baby that was born in a 2-week time period in the county where I was born that wasn't given a name and wasn't given a birth father's name. And so I assumed I knew what county I was born. I could have been born in a different one, but I started with the county that I knew, and I started with the time frame that I knew, and I looked at the Texas Birth Index record, and that lists every birth that happened in the state by the birth mother's last name for the year. And originally, back when I was in college, that information was sitting in a bunch of books at the state capitol, just miles away from me, but it was all on like paper, Bible thin pages within stacks and stacks of books by birth mother's last name.
Yeah.
But yet, after my mother passed away, my adoptive mom passed away, that's when I found out that those records had been digitized and that I could search based on specific date ranges, specific, details like that. And so it was very, very quickly, I got the birth mother's maiden name. And with that, I reached out to what we call a search angel. These are people who volunteer their time to help people find family. And this was also right about the time that Ancestry was beginning to be a big deal. This would have been 2008.
Okay.
And so this birth mother helped me look through marriage records and find the married the birth mother's new married last name. And from there, I found her on a high school reunion website. And then shortly thereafter, she led me to, about a year and a half later, she led me to my birth father. But it wasn't, one of the things I tell people that are going on a journey to find their birth parents is that it isn't necessarily who you find, but that you find. I was more interested in solving the mystery around how I came to be and then how I came to be trafficked. I was interested in meeting the woman who made me, obviously, but my primary interest was knowing my story, understanding the shape of it. And I also tell people that sometimes be careful what you wish for, because reunion can sometimes give you answers, but it can create a whole new set of questions.
Oh, yes.
And one of those questions that came from meeting her was that she had told me initially that I was a product of rape. And I did not believe that.
Yeah.
I had been the victim of that myself. And my gut told me there was more to the story. And I thought maybe that's what she had told her mother, who was still alive. and that was just what she was going to stick with, that story.
Yeah.
And eventually I had to cut ties from her in order to get her to come up and remember the truth. And eventually she did come up with the story that there was another man and that possibly he was the guy. And she remembered his full name and reached out to him on classmates.com, and he remembered her, and a DNA test proved that he was my birth father.
Okay.
The weird backstory to that story was that the man that she accused of the assault was actually a friend of the birth father, of the man that ended up being my birth father. They had palled around together, worked together around the time just before I was conceived. And when I met my birth father, he explained to me that my birth mother had been dating this other man, and this other man was married and had kids in Oklahoma, and didn't want to leave his wife and children, and that I was basically created out of the desire to make this guy jealous. So she basically asked his buddy out on her 20th birthday party, on her 20th birthday, to make the other guy jealous. And then when she wound up pregnant with me later, there may have been a question as to who actually was the father. Yeah.
Wow. A lot of moving pieces, isn't it?
It is. It was a lot. It was a lot to try to weave into a book as well.
No, I can imagine. Yeah. So, this was good, ma'am. You said it took about 15 years. You finally, just said we got to get it done. Okay.
Yeah.
That was like my first book I wrote. It took me 12 years, and I finally said, either get it done and quit or throw it away. So, but I finally did it. Yeah. So you definitely persevered, going and staying in there, because, man, but it had to been a lot on you every night. Today I'm going, oh, I got everything. Like you said, life comes and it takes you away from some of your priorities. And so it had to been an emotional challenge with you. I need to get this done.
Well, like I said, the reunion came quick, and shortly after my adoptive mother's death, and I hadn't done any of the research that I needed to do to know how to prepare for being in a reunion with the people who made you.
Yeah.
And that reunion with my birth mother went south fast because I hadn't read the books. And there are books on my website that I recommend for people who are thinking about finding their family, and articles that I've written as well. But I hadn't read any of that. I didn't learn any of that. And so when I did, I entered reunion with my birth father about a year after the reunion I had with my birth mother. And I was determined not to make the same mistakes I had made with him, with her.
Yeah.
I mean, with her, with him. Because I, in retrospect, I understood, where I could have done things differently. And definitely one of the lessons I learned is in reunion, go in with little baby steps and don't be afraid to be yourself and be genuine, and don't just say what you think the other person wants to hear. Don't be afraid to ask hard questions, but also do it in teeny tiny slow bits. You've got to build up.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Right.
I can see that. Yeah. You're going in and first thing it's that awkward seeing each other, and you're going, well, how's the weather? Oh yeah, it's raining here. Why'd you give me up for adoption?
Exactly.
Instead of jumping right on. Yeah, I could see building up the trust and the understanding, and then get to the hard questions.
Yeah. And she and I met the day she received my email, and we had the phone call shortly thereafter. Within hours, we were standing in front of each other, looking at each other. And she hadn't thought of me in, decades.
Oh, yeah.
So we rushed in way, way too fast.
So, wow. I mean, it's something I would never go through, because I told you before we got started, my 86-year-old mother, she's moved in with me because of dementia. So I know where I started. But for you, wow.
The there was another level of the
I'm
perseverance.
just amazed. I'm sorry to interview, but I'm just amazed with somehow, like you said, your adopted dad went and got some fraudulent paper. I'm surprised that they were able to come up with something. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Well, it was
I'm
before,
just surprised.
yeah, it was before 9/11. When after 9/11, they started requiring long form birth certificates and things like that, and things were a lot more strict, um, and more proof. But he told me he arrived with insurance papers that they took out on me from the day I was born, and doctor's records showing that I had been in their care, and school records showing that I had been in private school. I believe I was sent to private school because they couldn't have gotten me in a public school without a birth certificate.
Hmm.
But he just brought sworn testimony and notarized and said, this is my child. I don't know that they would do that today, but at the time, I think that's all it took. The fraudulent part comes in is in that they represented themselves to be the people who created me on that piece of paper. Yeah. But there was there was another story about perseverance that I'd like to share.
Yeah, go ahead.
The minute I met my birth father, I knew I wanted to write the story, but it ultimately took me going on 13 years now, and the book is coming out this November 3rd, between the time that I first thought of writing it and now that it's coming out.
Hey,
And
you're in good hands with me, Kane. It took me 12. So you're in good
Exactly.
hands. Took that long. That's all right. Long as you get it out, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. As long as you get it out. So, all right,
It
I'm
got
sorry.
to
Go ahead.
Well,
Go
it
ahead.
was just to say, it got to the point where even I was sick of hearing myself talk about it.
That's right.
But the reason it took so long is that shortly after I was in reunion with both of my birth parents, and this was all within like a year and a half, 2 years of my mother passing away, I learned that my reunion with my birth father had strained my marriage to the point that my husband was having an affair.
Oh.
And as an adoptee, this really triggered like all of my "you're not good enough" and abandonment wounds, and I did not take it well. And so I immediately moved out and sort of ceased to function. And then I spent a couple months just not being okay at all. And then I lost my job because of that. And then after I lost my job, my birth father had said, you're wanting to write this book. Why don't you come out here? I'll set up a cabin I've got on my property. He renovated it. He put like $30,000 into renovating this old cabin he had. And I moved myself into this house. And I said, you know what, I'm going to work on this book. And by that time, I had got a new job. I was working remotely, part-time. And I was like, sometimes you just kind of have to pull yourself up and just prod ahead. And this is what I will do. And I was there for about 3 months when I woke up and I was working, and I had a knock on the door, and someone told me that my garage was on fire. And it happened to be a very windy day. And I also learned that way out here in South Texas, they don't have fire hydrants or fire trucks that are not run, they're only volunteer fire trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the whole house burned down with everything that I owned, burned down with it. So everything I owned from my adoptive life burned to ashes on my birth father's property. And it blew my mind that these people had to come from like 30 minutes away with a truck of water.
Yeah.
It was crazy. You just don't think about those things when you're out in the beautiful countryside. But anyway, I lost everything that day. It was March. It was a very windy.
And then we went on and and then so after all that happened with you, like you froze up a little bit, so I was just trying to jump in. So that's okay. And so you were talking about the fire.
Yeah.
From there, go ahead, continue on.
A friend was visiting me, and I let her park her car in my garage, and it was on recall for setting itself on fire, even when it was turned off. So anyway, I lost everything. And so I like to say, in about the space of 3 years, my mother died. My daughter had moved out of the house to go start college. I got divorced. I lost my job, and everything I owned burned to ashes. Luckily, the book I had was in the cloud, right? But that really, really took the wind out of my sails.
Yeah.
I felt like I was just rebirthed, really, just starting from scratch on everything.
Oh yeah.
And, luckily I had a few things that I had not moved out of a storage unit. So some of those things were retained, like family jewelry, but mostly like the photo, everything I'd ever written, all my journals, and I'd kept things since childhood, and all my pictures and my family videos. Those were the things that really broke my heart. Were gone. And my response to that was I felt ashamed. And I don't know why that this happened. And
Okay, so we froze up again for a minute,
I'm so
and there
sorry.
you go. Yep, froze up for a second. You said you were ashamed.
Yeah. And I just think that's a strange response to something I really had no control over.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But I
You had
felt
no control over that
so
part.
ashamed. Yeah. Uh, and it was a weird feeling of like must have done something in my life to deserve this happening to me. And I think that might be something that, and you can tell me because we certainly know something tragic has happened in your life. I think some people, I know I did, felt like I must have brought this on myself.
Oh yeah,
So
feel like yeah that I don't know if we brought it on or this the way our life's supposed to be. Why us? We were hit with what, and now you want to get me again. So it's the question of why do I get so much attention? You know, for all this to take place with me. Um, some things, in life, we bring it on ourselves for decisions we make. But then there's a lot of things that come we have no control over, like you said, but we take the blunt end of the hit
yeah,
and
I think
and
that
then
might,
have different emotions with it.
yeah. And it might be about control, right? It's like I think that's when I finally realized that I was living with some kind of like false belief that I could control what happened to me in my life
Hmm.
to some degree. I mean, I had reached out into the universe with no information. I didn't know my name, my date of birth, my place of birth, and I found my biological parents. So I guess I might have had some kind of idea that, like I have some,
Opening up the Pandora box.
yes. But then I think when the fire happened, I realized how much of life is truly out of our control.
Oh,
And
yeah.
how no matter how hard we try to make things be a certain way or avoid certain things from happening, some things just happen to you. And that feeling of, well, if this bad thing could happen to me, what other bad thing is going to happen to me next?
Yeah, what's on the horizon? It ever goes to a way that people I like to read these positive stories and stuff. And it's is a blessing or a curse. And my little twist on that, I had a friend one time. He comes up to me and says, "James, I found $20 on the floor outside in the parking lot." He said, "Man, God's blessing me." I said, "Or the devil's cursing you." He said, "What?" I said, "Well, it depends on what you do with that $20. Buy you a pair of shoes because you need them." And this guy was homeless. He was addictive, not addictive, but an addict. And I said, "Or you can buy a meal for a homeless person, to help out." I said, "Or if you go do drugs on your own, then it's not a blessing. God's not going to bless you to get high." And sure enough, that's what he did. And
Right.
so the way we view things, blessing or a curse, good or bad,
Yeah.
and we got that human instinct. We shoot for the negative first, and then we have to step back and look what's in the positive in it. So,
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
so wow.
And there is a lot of positive that came out of my experience. There really was a ton. And I would not change anything about my past, including the people who raised me, because ultimately I believe they didn't do too bad of a job in the end. It
I
made
was
me who
going to
I am
ask you a
today.
question
So,
looking back do you think they did the best they could with what was going on in their
Yeah.
life? Yeah.
You know, I think it's probably most parents do the best they can, and sometimes that's just not quite good enough. And unfortunately, for a
Yeah, I
lot of
agree with
people,
that.
it's far off.
Since you don't get that owner's manual like you
Yeah,
do a car, right?
yeah.
So
But I
I
do believe they
agree.
did the best. I do believe that they truly were doing the best they could. Although I do also know that my adoptive mother, before she passed away, admitted that she felt like she had failed on several levels and was remorseful for her behavior and some of the choices that she made. And for, I guess, I took care of her. She lived with me for the 15 years before she passed away. She was never able to take care of herself.
Hmm.
And so, she apologized for the burden that she knew in her heart that she was, because of her inability to, I guess, own her own life.
Yeah,
And apologies, they go when when they really come from the heart. They go very far. They can be very healing, and as is writing your own story. I highly recommend that too.
I highly recommend to everybody write a book. I don't care if it doesn't have to be a how to and improve, just the memoir. Your true story is going to help someone else. And so, and what you got out of it and what you can share with other, to me, yeah, I'm like you, write a book and go from there. So even if you're dead and gone, your grandchildren, great grandchildren, somebody's going to eventually read it.
That's true. And the other part of reason I wanted to get the story out there is because after finding my biological parents, I had a cousin reach out to me on Ancestry looking for her mother. She was also adopted. And it turns out her mother was my biological aunt. My
Okay.
birth mother's sister had placed a child a few years before I came along. And this adoptee that was looking for her mother also had used the same attorney her parents had. And she too did not have a proper birth certificate
Okay. Okay.
or adoption. So that validated for me that this wasn't just a story my parents told me, but that this was something that this attorney was doing, not just once. He'd have done at least twice, which
Yeah.
makes me think that there may be many other babies
Oh,
born in
how
the
many?
60s
Exactly. How many could it be? Yeah.
in the Texas area that were handled by this man who may be struggling with the same kinds of legal, issues around identity. And so I'm hoping that by putting this out into the world, if anybody reads it, they'll reach out to me and maybe we can learn a little more about, compare stories and learn more about this guy. Now, I didn't include his name in the book. I most of the names in the book I changed, and I made a conscious decision. Even though he's passed away, I made a conscious decision not to use his name because I got on this memorial website for him that they post, at the funeral home that handled his funeral, and I read all the wonderful things that his friends and family had written about him. And in my mind, I'd grown up basically demonizing the guy.
Yeah.
And then again, you realize people are multifaceted, and he's gone. He can't do this to anybody else. And so I thought, dragging this family through this muck would serve no real purpose.
Yeah. I agree.
However, I do say if anybody reads the book and sees similarities and they want to know the actual attorney's name so we can compare notes, reach out to me and we'll have a talk about that. Yeah.
I get you. So a lot of stuff to make decisions on. So, well, I think you're doing great. I appreciate you coming on, sharing, and again with that book of yours coming on, and you said you can pre-order it. Go ahead and pre-orders, pre-sales. Coming out in November. So tell people about that.
Okay, well, it's called Wonderland: Memoir of a Black Market Adoption by Patricia Knight Meyer. It is currently on Amazon on pre-sale, both in ebook and print formats. In a few months, around the same time that it comes out, it will also be available on audiobook, which I narrate myself. So depending on what format you like, they're all there. If you want to get on the launch list, which is a newsletter list for the book, you can do so at wonderlandthememoir.com. Anyone that joins the launch list will be entered to win a bunch of free prizes and giveaways on launch day, which includes a lost chapter from the book, a 3-hour writing consultation with me, and a bunch of other fun stuff. And if you want to learn more about adoption and adoption search and reunion, you can go to myadoptedlife.com, and that's my website where I blog and where I include a lot of resources around adoption topics and reunion topics and things like that, and organizations that you can become part of if you're wanting to search, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'll get the Amazon link to put in the notes. I'll get your website to put in the notes. You have the social media, make it for people to find you?
Yes. On Facebook, I'm at Patricia Knight Meyer. On Instagram, I'm on both Patricia Knight Meyer and Somebody's Baby. That's with somebody S, 2_ baby. On TikTok, I'm at My Adopted Life as well.
I like the, you say I'm somebody's baby.
No, it's just
somebody's baby.
I'll send you those links too. They're also all on my website. But it's somebody's with an S and then 2_ baby.
I'll get that information put in there. So, and we've already found each other. You found me for the Instagram. So I clicked approve or friend or whatever it's called over there. So
we connected. Yeah.
There we go. Good deal. Connected. There we go. So, well, Patricia, thank you for being here, sharing. It's a powerful story, and it's definitely going to help out other people. And so, hopefully, through your book, through your speaking, through all the podcasts, you bring awareness, and somebody's going to wake up and come grab and pick your brain.
Well, thank you for helping me share my story.
You're welcome, man. That's why we do this, to get these stories out. So, all right. Well, hey, Patricia, we know people are hurting and struggling. And if you can leave us with a positive message, that'd be a blessing.
I would love to. I think my positive message is that no matter what you're confronting in your life, always, for me personally, have faith that it will work out the way it's supposed to work out. If you were an adoptee and you're on your search journey, again, remember, it's not who you find, but it's that you find. 1 in 5 people are adopted, and 1 in 5 people who take an ancestry DNA test find out that someone in their family is not related to them or some such thing. So it's important when you're making these discoveries to give yourself grace, take everything very slowly in your reunion journey, or any type of challenge or endeavor that you have. I think it's always important to sit with it, to listen to your gut, not necessarily your head, and remember that in the worst of times, this too shall pass, that you were put on this earth for a reason, that you have something to give everyone in your life, and to always stay positive. And like you said, Dr. Perdue, is you can look at things in the positive light, or you can look at it in the negative. So if you find yourself stuck in that negative track, sit down and write what the positive angle is on that. And also practicing daily affirmations. Every morning I wake up and I name 5 things that I am truly grateful for. And that alone can just set your mindset on the right path at the beginning of every day.
All right. Awesome. You did great. You must have done these podcasts before. You did all right. So, I tell people when when hardship comes, like you said, hang in there like a loose tooth and go from there. So, all right.
That's great.
That's in Southern talks.
Yeah.
Hang in like a hair in a biscuit. All right. Hang around like a double chin. So
the Southern thing I like is there's a lid for every pot.
There you go. It's right. So it may not be attractive or go along with it, but it does the job. So, All right, Patricia, thank you for being here. You've been
Thank
a
you.
blessing to me. And see, we've got a couple of people finishing up with us. Got a thumbs up there. So thank you for whoever it is that's coming in listening.
Thank you.
And everybody else, share with someone else that you know can use an upbeat story that's maybe you got a kick me down going on. You need something to bring you up a little bit. Patricia's story is going to help you. All right, everybody, do something. I'm Dr. James Purdue, the professor of perseverance. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.